This is not the first time that we've done this. So we're going to go through a little bit of a quick update. Um, Last time we did this, I showed a bunch of steps on how to get a new generated Ember app to use Vite. Um, and there were too many steps last time. And I think about a week after the last Ember Europe, the steps that I had in my slides were out of date and they wouldn't work anymore. So I'd had a bit of a spite project um, after that happened for the first time, and I built the first version of what I demoed at EmberConf, the Vite app blueprint. So this is something that makes our many steps down to just one step, and it's quite a simple thing here. Um, it is just a little bit of extra work to tell Ember New to generate a Ember app, essentially. So in this case, I'm always using the latest Ember, no matter what uh, version I have installed globally. I'm making a new fancy app, but I'm telling it not to use the normal app blueprint, to use this Embroider app blueprint. Um, this is pretty cool because not only is it generating a Vite app for you, it is something that we test every single day. So if something in the ecosystem is broken or something that myself or other members of the tooling core team have broken, we get nagged about it on Discord. And you can see here that the actual tests are running and they're working quite well at the moment. So I'll get into that a little bit more in a little bit. Um, you can also use the blueprint to update a existing app. I'll get into that in a second as well. It's a little bit more, it looks similar, but it's a little bit different. It's using init instead of new. This also worries about the version of Ember CLI that you have installed in the app that you're trying to update. So even though you're telling it to use the latest here, it doesn't do anything. So you have to update your Ember CLI first. It's very finicky. It's not designed to be the way that we update apps going forward. Once this becomes the standard, and Marco will no doubt talk about that in a little bit, once we actually get this the standard for the whole community, this whole update process will be probably a code mod. Um, so that is it for the slides that I have. What I did was I ran that update or ran the new generator to compare it to a existing Ember app, and I thought I would walk through some of the changes that have happened recently. So this is the full diff of a new app. And the only things that are really different are your environment config. We have a little bit of a difference in your app and your index HTML. I'm not going to open it in this app here because actually I can't zoom in, which is a bit annoying. So I'm going to open it in code, which will be nice. Code. Boop. This should be oh, I am not down far enough. This is my fancy code. Boop. So this is what a brand newly generated Ember app with Vite looks like. And we can just go pm start. In fact, I need to stop this one for that to work. pm start. And it does a bunch of stuff. It does an Ember pre-build. And then it generates an Ember app for us. Localhost 4200, and it works. I had no worries that this was going to be a repeat of our first time of doing this demo because of that CI testing, and I ran it just before the call today, so I knew it was working. I had a lot of confidence. But the thing that's different as well between now and last time is that actually uh, all of our application code, JavaScript, uh, all of our application code is now getting uh, chunked and optimized in a way that it wasn't literally a week ago. This is now not only verifying that Ember can kind of limp along and build an Ember app, it can actually legitimately build an Ember app as it's supposed to be built with Vite, having all of your dependencies go into a pre-optimized bundle and having your app stay as like normal modules that the browser requests while developing. That is one of the reasons why it's so fast to develop with. This is all very cool. This is all kind of a little bit interesting, let's say. But what would happen if you try to run this on a slightly bigger app? And I was trying to think about, for a demo today, what kind of larger app this would be interesting to see it in. And I thought, well, I'm in the Ember learning team as well. And we have this Ember app, the API docs, that it would be really cool if I could demo to the whole Ember community today, the API docs running in Vite. Marco didn't know I was going to do this today. And it works. It takes a little time to do the pre-build, and in seemingly no time at all. Let's see if it broke. Did it break? Boom. In seemingly no time at all, it works. It's blank for one very particular reason, which is not everything works perfectly. So this is in the case where your app can boot, but it's not perfect. There are some issues that we are still trying to figure out on the team, but it does work in a reasonable fashion. I am doing an extra little thing here because actually some of these links are broken and I didn't want to have to show you that. But this is like a full, I don't know if anybody knows about Shiki. Shiki is like a new code syntax highlighter thing. This is being rendered with Markdown using Ember CLI Showdown. Like this is a real proper app doing real things with lots of real modules. And it's also practically instantaneous for editing. So if I go in here, find where that is in the thing and say H1, hello, Europe. That is practically instantaneous rebuild speeds on an app that is actually using Ember Source 3.28. So we have done it on the Embroider initiative. We have succeeded. Just after the initiative has ended, we were able to reach the goal that we wanted, which is have Ember, have it to be possible for Ember to be built on modern tooling with practically instantaneous rebuild speeds. And I don't think we can get any better than that as a way to hand over to Marco.
Yep, thanks, Chris. Give me 1 second to figure out my stuff here. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
The correct one, not the one with the speaker notes, right? Just the slide.
Embroider initiative becomes the Ember initiative.
Okay, awesome, great. Yeah, so I mean, continuing on the very positive update that Chris just shared, the other update is that we're announcing that the Ember initiative becomes the Embroider initiative becomes the Ember initiative. At least that's what we're proposing, right? We can't make it work without sponsors and so on. We'll see later on. My name is Marco. I'm founder and managing director of Main Matter. I'm not going to do a quick intro, I guess, so people know who we are. the Embroider initiative, as it's a little flag here, as Chris just shared, has been quite successful, right? A bunch of companies have come together, right? And even some individuals to allow us to have a team work full-time on Embroider for 1 year, right? Initially, it didn't really look like we could make the full year work, but then sort of sponsors came in again to support us longer. And so we were able to work on this for an entire year, and we made quite some progress with the road towards building our Ember apps with Vite. So, whoops, now being clear, right, as Chris just showed. There's a little work to do, like here and there, to make it smoother and so on, but this is a giant step for the entire Ember ecosystem, right? And for many years, it looked like we might not get that. Like I think I said when I introduced the Embroider initiative for at least 3 or 4 years in a row at Emberfest in the closing panel, we talked about how Embroider is the next big thing for Ember, but it was the same conversation every year, right? It's gonna be the next big thing for Ember, but it never happened, right? And now it has happened, I don't know, not 100%, but 95%, whatever, right? We're almost completely there, which is great. But now, it would be a shame if we made this one giant step forward and then sort of would stall again for or indefinitely, right? Framework like Ember obviously needs constant maintenance and evolution and progress and so on to also like keep the level of trust that companies that have built on Ember up, right? So it would be a shame if we stopped here, right? Although it was such a big success, right? We want to continue. So this is why, like I said in the beginning, we suggest turning the Embroider initiative into the Ember initiative. And the idea is for that to be a permanent effort to keep advancing the Ember ecosystem in the future, right? Building on the positive momentum of the Embroider initiative. And what we want to do is we want to keep the Embroider initiative team working on topics that are relevant to the Ember ecosystem indefinitely, as I said, right? Or as long as we can get funding, right? Which ideally is indefinitely or our lifetimes. But of course, with Embroider being done or being 95% done, right? There's no sort of single topic that is sort of clearly what we should be focusing on, right? So the question is, what we'll be working on instead? And the idea is that we will be working on a variety of topics, different topics at different times as they are sort of most relevant at the time, right? And we want to break those topics down then into quarterly roadmaps that our sponsors get to contribute to, depending on their sponsorship level, because they provide the funding for that, right? They should have a sort of seat at the table that we decide what to focus on. And for the start, we already sort of collected some suggestions for the main topics that we think would be good topics to focus on initially. And those are, first of all, polishing Embroider, right? To make the path towards Vite smoother and sort of easier accessible to more teams, right? Which would, for example, include an easier update experience, right? So you don't have to do what Chris just showed, but you can like run a simpler command. And it's like more likely to succeed in more cases. But it also includes like ideally more backwards compatibility documentation, which is definitely needed to make this the standard, right? It has to be in the guides and so on. And it probably needs to include adapting the most used add-ons, right? And that either means changing the add-ons or documenting alternatives, or maybe documenting sort of just using kind of standard JavaScript libraries instead of special Ember add-ons, because that should be easier in the future as well. A bit related to that is the second topic, which is developer tooling that we suggest we work on a little bit as well. So the Ember inspector probably needs some work to properly function with Vite built apps that are just like the output bundle is like different, obviously, than it was before. So the inspector has to be updated to be able to work with that. And it's lacking proper support for modern Ember patterns currently already, like template tags and so on. So improving all that will definitely be a big improvement for sort of developer experience and developer efficiency and so on. Also, as part of this initiative, we suggest we work with Alex Metchner in a similar fashion that we worked with Ed Faulkner on the Embroider initiative. And Alex presented his initiative to work on better Glint and TypeScript tooling and using Vola as a sort of foundation for that to simplify maintenance at, I think, the last Ember Europe, or maybe the one before, I'm not entirely sure, but you can find the video on YouTube, definitely. And I mean, sort of putting the tooling on Vola instead of sort of a custom implementation is kind of a similar approach to the Embroider approach, right? So we build on stuff that exists in the wider JavaScript ecosystem already, and that we don't have to maintain, and that's maybe better than we can sort of build on the side of working on a bunch of other things anyway. And then we benefit by getting better stuff with less maintenance, essentially. Another thing, like a small but potentially impactful thing for a bunch of teams would be developing an easy way to compile Ember apps to web components. It's already possible to use web components inside of Ember apps, and we suggest sort of making that work the other way around as well, right? By building a way to compile Ember apps themselves to web components to improve interoperability in multi-framework environments, which more and more of the companies that we talk to are using. And finally, we want to make the first step towards a new router. And building the entire new router is a big thing. Nobody really knows how exactly the new router is going to look, but we want to make the first step, right? Which is introducing manager APIs for routes and the router itself to unlock experimentation, right? This is similar to component manager APIs that I think unlocked the experimentation that resulted in Glimmer there, right? And the new router will eventually then sort of enable all kinds of improvements, like simplification of the Ember framework as such, right? As we're removing a bunch of concepts, right? We're removing raw templates, we are removing controllers. We will have a better way to deal with query params and so on. And by that, we're also removing a number of subtle bugs, right? That the current router has and that some teams are suffering from. And it might ideally also unlock a new approach to engines, right? Sort of like allowing to split big Ember apps into sort of separate chunks or separate parts that separate teams can work on without interfering with each other in isolation, and so on, which obviously is particularly important for large teams. The question is, or like I kind of spoiled the answer in the beginning, I guess the question is, how do we fund this, right? And of course, we want to stick to the same funding model that made the Embroider initiative a success, right? And that is so having many companies with a shared interest come together. So no single company has to carry like all of the weight, all of the load alone, but everybody contributes a little, and together they enable significant progress, right? And we will have sponsorship levels, again, different tiers and so on, so that every team and every company can sort of contribute according to their abilities. At the top, we have the top tier, surprise, who will get like social media announcements and so on, logo placement. They will get access to the weekly 1 hour office hours. They do get the pairing sessions, right? Like 1 weekly pairing session for 2 hours with our engineers. They can attend and contribute to the quarterly planning, as I said, right? And they can like influence the quarterly planning. And we have plans for either 6 or 12 months where sort of we give a discount for the full year, because obviously we want companies sort of to fund us for the long term, right? So that makes the planning better, and that makes it more realistic that we can work on larger things that will also require more than a quarter of work. Then next we have the middle tier. They also get the social media announcements and so on, logo placement. They do get access to the weekly 1-hour office hours. They do not get the pairing sessions as it is now with that sponsorship level, and they don't get to influence the quality plan, right? So if you're talking to any decision makers, convince them to use to get the top tier, because more benefits for the Ember ecosystem as well. And then we have the base tier at the bottom, which is for individuals. I think we had 2 individuals at the last Embroider initiative. So we wanted to make a plan that works for them as well as for like really small teams and small companies, right? They get praised for supporting the initiative, and that's kind of it, but they also get a very good feeling out of that, hopefully, by knowing they support the Ember ecosystem. So what's left to say here is we need all of you to help make this reality. So with call to action, right? If you are a current sponsor, a decision maker at a company that uses Ember, or sort of are passionate and are willing to spend a lot of time, maybe, or like maybe only little time, to convince your higher ups to join the initiative and support the initiative, please do so. That helps us a lot and helps the Ember ecosystem a lot. And if this all works out as we hope it will, then the next step will be signing up sponsors, right, for the next few weeks and months, and then so that we can prepare a roadmap for Q4 with our sponsors, and start the work in Q4 as well. And that is the Ember initiative, essentially. One note before I close: you might all be aware that Emberfest is going to Dublin this year, right? September 12th and 13th. Some first speakers have already been announced. Some more speakers will be announced. We are extending the CFP, which was supposed to close tomorrow for I think end of July is what we said. So there is time to submit a talk. Please do so. And I hope to see you all there. And with that, that's it. Thank you. And thanks for helping us making the Ember initiative a reality. And if you need anything in terms of support, like while talking to decision makers, or also please don't hesitate to reach out. Obviously, we are very happy to help doing so.